jobs, could be, what was it in Back to the Future that was 50 cents?
Movie.
A movie. Could be the price of anything. All right? Times the CPI over the current year divided by the CPI of the earlier year. So that's one more kind of calculation you need to know. Any questions on calculations that are related to prices and inflation or even deflation right now? Yeah?
Can you repeat the one you just said?
This is in your book. What page is it on for you guys? For me, it's 119. Okay, thanks. It says converting dollars from one year to another, or really the price of anything from one year to another. And the formula that's in your book is the salary in today's current dollars equals the salary in an earlier year times the CPI over the current, the CPI of the current year divided by the CPI of the earlier year. Do you see that in your book?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. All right, any other questions before we move on to unemployment? This is a really fascinating topic, unemployment. Especially because of the time we're living in. Now, what's that? Still haven't decided. Just close this now, right, Kobe?
Yeah.
After I push stop, I push the X. Great. So now let's talk about unemployment. Unemployment. So go to the page in your book where it's got a chart that says who are the unemployed. It's got these nice colors and stuff. There are things that I would consider to be weaknesses of your book, but there's some really good strengths. And one of the strengths are the visuals. Very good. It's on page 124. Okay? It breaks down the different segments of society that may or may not be involved in work, in doing work. And as you look in your book, it says the whole population. You start with everybody. And the first thing that we do when we look at the labor force is we start to separate people out. Right? The total population breaks into one group, which is what we call the civilian, non-institutionalized population, and then everybody else. Civilian, non-institutional population, and then all the people that aren't in that group. So if you aren't a civilian, you're something else, right? You're probably in the military, or you might be institutionalized. Now what does that mean, institutionalized? This box that's on top. You're in a mental hospital, perhaps. You're in prison, okay? Those kinds of people we could consider institutionalized. And I don't know, you could argue that we obviously need to look at the opportunities for employment for those kinds of people, but those kinds of people are not the people we look at when we calculate the unemployment rate, okay? So take those people, we set them aside, and we focus on the bottom box, the civilian, non-institutional population. You got me so far? All right? Now, take that box and we break it up into two groups too. People that are not in the labor force and people that aren't part of the civilian labor force. What's the difference between those two boxes? Well, you're not in the civilian labor force if you're not looking for a job. My wife, once upon a time, was in the labor force. She's done several jobs before my son was born. He was born 10 years ago. And just over 10 years ago, she was in the civilian labor force. She was a grade school teacher. She taught grade school for 5 years. Okay? Now, fortunately, she's been able to stay home with the children and work hard as a homemaker, but she's not in the labor force. She's not actively looking for work. She's not looking for a paid job. So she would go in the top box, correct? I would go in the bottom box. Now, we've talked at home about the possibility of her finding a job sometime in the near future. The kids are getting old enough. When Christian's 10, he's in 4th grade. In a year and a half, he's going to be at the middle school, God willing. And then my daughter's in 1st grade. She's 6. So they're in school all day long at this point, and she's very involved, but because of their age, she has an opportunity to go and start looking for paid work, be in the labor force. If that's the case, she goes, yeah, okay, I'm going to start putting applications out there. Then she moves boxes, correct? So any questions so far about the difference between the boxes? Now, we take that box that says the civilian labor force, and we break that up, and now we really start to have the ability to judge in one way our economic health. Because last class we said there's some basic ways to say how healthy is our economy, right? Are prices rising too fast for people to keep up? The infamous Blake, or Blake, because I'm going to be referring to Blake as the bad guy of inflation for the rest of the semester. I just do that every semester. Last semester was Jamie Munoz. She didn't seem to mind. Blake's a good guy, so you're the bad guy when it comes to inflation. So, when it comes to our economic health, another thing we look at is employment, right? So, now that we know who to take a look at, the people that are part of the civilian institutional population, people that are actually in the labor force, they say, look, I'm going to play the game, I'm in. We break that up into the employed and the unemployed, okay? Now, I write in my book sometimes, I make notes, you don't have to, but if this just helps at all, because for me, sports is a part of my background, it helps clarify it, you can kind of look at it like sports. That box that says non-institutional population, that's like all the eligible players. People that are eligible to play the game. You're not eligible if you're not in the minority, the military, you're in prison, you're in a mental hospital. You're not eligible to play the game. You're busy doing other stuff, all right? So my book I wrote eligible. The other two boxes, not joining a team and tryouts or joining a team, all right? My wife is not interested in joining a team. Her team used to be Andesol Elementary School. That was the team she was a part of. And even a bigger team, Los Angeles Unified School District. Okay? Right now she's not on a team, she's not joining. The rest of us that are in the labor force, yeah, we're either trying out or we're trying to be on a team. And then what about the last two boxes? You could think of it as you're either on a team or you're not on a team, right? Okay, so that's just one way to think about this. Now, there's a couple of calculations that you have to know how to do, but most well known is the unemployment rate. And you just have to memorize this. It's a simple task of memorization. So, the task is, remember which two boxes I used for the calculation. But it's very simple. So, take a look at your book, and then write on your boards, erase your boards if you haven't already, and write on your boards what two boxes, the names of the two boxes you're going to use to calculate the unemployment rate. If you're going to calculate the unemployment rate, and you will have to do this in this class without a calculator, what two boxes do you use? What's the formula? Hold it up as soon as you got it written. It's not the number of employed, Nicole. Number of unemployed over the civilian labor force. All right? Good. Erase them. Next question. What's the formula for calculating the labor force participation rate? The labor force participation rate. What two boxes do you use? I don't think that's right, Ben. Cody the Crow's Nest got civilian labor force over the civilian non-institutional population. Thank you very much. That's right. Different way of looking at the employment picture. What percentage, in other words, of people are participating, right? Are participating. And then what about the employment rate? I skipped on you. This is the middle one, right? The employment rate, what's the formula for that? The number of, write it down, employed persons over the civilian non-institutional population. All right, good. You can get up in time, you're slow. Get up. Now, those are the calculations. What are reasons people are employed or not employed, particularly unemployed? Because economics is known as the dismal science. We look at all the negative stuff and try to explain why bad stuff happens. Like, you want a job and you can't find one. It's kind of bad, right? That's a negative thing. Sometimes economists get a bad rap because they say I'm not really an economist, I'm a teacher of economics, right? But economists get a bad rap because it seems like they're always negative, they're focusing on the negative. But they do that because hopefully they're trying to explain and find us a path to a better life, right? So what are some reasons why people are unemployed? That's right, changing market conditions. The economy.
A lot of things went out of business, and I don't know if that falls under one of those umbrellas, that's what we mentioned.
Yeah, you could make the argument that you guys are kind of giving overlapping reasons.
Like with technology, less and less people are needed.
That's true. You know what's interesting I find about technology is that, yeah, first of all, less and less people are needed to do the tasks in a lot of different fields than we used to. But secondly, the way that things are evolving, they put a lot more on the end customer, don't they? There used to be people that would actually pump your gas, maybe one or two of your relatives have told you that. Gosh, I remember the days when they used to pump your gas, right? And they'd take care of the financial piece of the transaction. It wasn't, I hate to complain, but on the way home, one of the gas stations I stop off at only takes ATM.
Yeah, that's really annoying.
Right.
Because when they only take debit card,
They only take debit, and besides the fact that they charge a fee for that, there's one place, is it on Mason? It's
I
on
think
Mason
all
or something?
Arcos only take debit.
I don't even know if it's an Arco.
Take credit.
But there's one center island that everybody has to go to. Sounds so lazy. Gosh, I can't swipe at my actual pump. You know, I have to walk 5 steps. But it's kind of annoying that we all have to go to this one spot to swipe our ATMs and pay a fee because we're using ATM, even though that's the only thing they take, right? Rather than just being able to pay at your actual pump, if you're pump 6. You have to go to the station and you have to swipe, and you have to approve the payment, and then you have to say, okay, I'm at pump 6, right? But they put a lot more on people through technology, don't they? What about supermarkets that have self-checkouts? Yes, on one level it's nice that the technology is advanced, but in some ways the technology is advanced to take the human labor aspect out of the business, but put it on the consumer, because now I'm working like a part-time checker, right? It's interesting. If you pay attention to that, a lot of stuff has been put on us, household consumers, to do for ourselves what companies used to do for us, one way or another. Okay? Now, the reasons that you all give for people being unemployed are good, valid reasons. But I want to rephrase them a little bit differently in accordance with your book. Right? So in your book, after those formulas, you'll see job loser, job leaver, re-entrant, new entrant. All right? These are reasons or classifications of people that are unemployed. So a job loser is not, dude, if you're a loser, you have no job. It means you lost your job. Okay? Your book says this is a person who is employed in the civilian labor force and was either fired or laid off. Real simple. All right? And that's where most people fit. You're either fired or laid off when you're unemployed. That's not everybody though. A job leaver. A job leaver is somebody who chooses to quit their job. And for some period of time they're unemployed. So for me, an example is leaving Notre Dame to come to Chaminade. I was trying to leave Notre Dame for a good year. Looking for a job, looking for the right place, and then finally things fell into place for me to come to Chaminade. Okay? As you all know, you don't teach year-round, you don't go to school year-round for the most part. You have the summers off. So for that summer, in between me working at Notre Dame and me coming to